Well, hello. This video is called How to Wear Vintage. Let me explain who I am. My name is Nush, Anushka, but no one can ever spell it. Thanks, Mum and Dad. And I am a vintage stylist. I'm a personal stylist as well. And I'm also a presenter, so I do TV and radio, which is why I first really discovered the importance of finding a unique look, because you've got to stand out when you do something like that, because you don't want to go in looking like everybody else. And I think the same can be said for your life. You know, if you're taking on a new job, if you just had a baby and you've kind of lost yourself and you want to get back that self-confidence, I find that clothes are a really, really good way of doing that, because particularly when you've had your babies, you know, I've got two children, you lose your sense of self a little bit after you've had your babies. You don't fit in the clothes that you used to wear. The shops that you used to shop in don't seem to kind of like fit you anymore. They just seem a bit far removed. And also, I don't know about you, but I don't mind, you know, seeing people in similar style. But when you see people wearing exactly the same thing that you're wearing, it kind of makes you go a little bit like that. I'm like, I want it to look special. And also, you know, wearing vintage means that you can often find pieces in charity shops, pre-love shops, not just vintage shops. Vintage shops tend to come at a premium. But if you know where to go in a charity shop, you can find really good vintage pieces. Often, do you know, I found a Karl Lagerfeld jacket that was 13 quid in a charity shop. You just got to know the labels. You've got to know what you're looking for. So this video is about you understanding that when you wear vintage, it's not about fancy dress. It's about finding a unique style that suits you. It could just be that one item that instantly overhauls everything. But if you've lost yourself, or maybe you've reached an age, a milestone, you know, I'm in my 40s now. So I think it's time that we found you your unique style. And I think vintage can really help you do that. So, how are we going to get you this look then? How are we going to get you a look that makes you stand out and makes you go, actually, I feel confident enough to buy a vintage piece of clothing and wear it? Because I think if you are somebody that is used to shopping in the high street, vintage clothes do have a different look. I mean, when you go into a vintage, honestly, I remember the first time I walked into a vintage shop and I was just so blown away by everything, the colours, the patterns. It was a shop in Putney that my dad shopped at, because my dad was a big vintage aficionado. Nobody dressed as well as my dad. He was just impeccable, and he wore sort of silks, vintage tweed. And I remember going into that shop and finding bits I really liked and sort of questioning it, thinking, oh, you know, they look a little bit different. Am I going to look a little bit fancy dress? And I realised that I quite like the fact that it was different. And also, I like the fact that, you know, you're getting patterns that you don't see on the high street anymore. This is very clearly a vintage shift dress, which I've worn out. And I always think, I don't know about you, this is me sounding a little bit mad, but when I put on a vintage dress, I can feel whether the person that wore it before me had a good time. This is a party dress. So whenever I put this on, I go, oh, I'm ready. I've worn it out quite a few times. Don't really remember most of the nights I've worn it, but it gives me a very special feeling. So, you know, embrace different, embrace bold. So what I'm going to tell you to do is, if you go into a vintage shop or a charity shop, because often a lot of charity shops will have rails in there which are dedicated to vintage, before you sit there and you might go, oh, it's a bit musty, it's a bit this, so get that out of your head, because once you've aired that piece of clothing, it will take on a different scent. So get rid of that. Remember also that the beauty of vintage is that it comes with a lot more fabric. So back in the 50s, they used to make dresses that were literally sort of billowing fabric. So, you know, they would last you a lot longer. When you got, you know, you put on a little bit, you could take it out. At the waist, you could take it in. You know, the hems were there was a lot more fabric for you to play with. Whereas nowadays, they're quite frugal with the fabric. So, you know, vintage can be played with, it can be altered. I've bought pieces where I bought a lovely jumpsuit where the arms were not quite long enough. I've got really, really long arms actually. So, you know, when I look at things, if I can't make it sort of a 3/4 length sleeve, it just looks really, really odd. So you can adjust it. You can take it to a really good dressmaker. You don't have to do it yourself. Find a good one. And it means then that you can make the pieces fit you. So the jumpsuit that I got, which has got like an incredible lace back, it's really stunning. You can see me wearing it here. it was something that I saw and I knew that I really liked, but I thought, oh, it doesn't quite fit me. You know, you can alter these things. I also found a wonderful vintage 70s dress, but it was a little bit Abigail's party, but it was kind of, it was A-line to the floor, which I quite liked, but it almost looked a little bit too vintage, if you see what I mean, because it was just that odd length on my body. So again, I had it taken up and I had the sleeves slightly shortened to 3/4 lengths. Once you've found a really good seamstress, you can get somebody to do this all for you. This doesn't have to be something that you master yourself, so don't worry about that. The other thing that I will say to you is look for prints. This is printed. If you get your dots and your patterns, if you've got a pair of dungarees, which I'm a massive fan of, a day doesn't go by when I don't smile at my dungarees. You could literally put the shirts under your dungarees and it's instant unique style. That's all you've got to do. Just put the shirt on, put the dungarees on. It is a vintage quirky outfit, but it is very you because nobody else is going to be wearing the print that you're wearing. Equally, if you're sat there thinking the problem is, Nush, when I go into a vintage shop, everything is very small sizes, and that is an issue. But what I find is, particularly with male tailoring is great. It is quite a look at the minute, actually. So you can follow trends with vintage and get something that's a bit quirky. I bought this fabulous 80s jacket, oversized, that I put on with like a white t-shirt, often distressed jeans, put my trainers on, and it's something which I love. So it's got that vintage quirkiness, but it is actually a little bit on trend, dare I say. So that's a really good thing to look at. Look at the men's tailoring rail. And like I say, I will take you on a trip to a charity shop and we'll walk around it and we'll talk about how we make it work for you. The other thing is layering. The beauty of layering. If you find a wonderful men's shirt with a vintage, like a 70s men's shirt, you can actually wear it over something. So in the summer, you could put on a pair of jean hot pants, white t-shirt, throw on a printed shirt, and it just gives you that little sense of quirk, and it's unique, but it's something nobody else is going to wear, and it's not necessarily dependent on it fitting you exactly. So that's a really good way to go about it as well. Now, what we need to work on now is getting you the foundations in your wardrobe that will make vintage work for you. This is really the key to wearing vintage. You need to have a good pair of jeans. Now, you might think, but what style of jeans do I go wide leg? Do I go crop? Do I go, if you've got a pair of jeans that you love, whether it be skinny, wide leg, that is great. You've got a good base to build your vintage foundation on. So let's say you were wearing a pair of wide leg jeans. Actually, when you've got a vintage print shirt, tuck it in slightly at the front. It's all about what we'll talk about in another video, actually, is proportions. When you're putting outfits together, you need to understand the way that your body is, because it might be that you're really broad shouldered and then you go sort of quite triangular like that. You might be very blessed and sort of have an hourglass shape like that, but when you wear big things, it kind of doesn't sort of accentuate your sort of itty bitty waist. Or you might be somebody that doesn't really have much definition here, but you absolutely love your long shapely legs. So it's about playing with your body shapes, but you've got to get the cornerstone, like I said. So a good pair of jeans is essential. I would say that you need, if you want to have that vintage look, a pair of ankle boots, a pair of really good cowboy boots. Cowboy boots are everywhere at the minute. And I just get a really neutral colour. But here's the thing, leopard print is a neutral. I don't care what anyone says. If you've got a pair of leopard print, it could be heels, and you're wearing a vintage print top with a pair of indigo jeans or a faded jean, that is instant style, honestly. So if you're going to invest in a pair of shoes that's going to sort of elevate your vintage wardrobe, go leopard print. Yay! Anyway, I got very carried away there. So you need a good pair of heels. You need a good pair of jeans. A white t-shirt is a godsend. If you've got a printed vintage skirt, which you found, and often people can be put off by vintage skirts because they look at it, they think, oh, they look a bit granny on the rail in the charity shop or wherever, the vintage shop. Just think about them with your cool trainers and a white t-shirt and a denim. It's a really easy way to think about them rather than sort of thinking, oh, my gran might have worn that when it wasn't kind of like a favourable look. So, anything with a print on it, big skirts, t-shirt. I also think now there's something which has started to come back now again. I mean, they were around in the 90s, bodies. And I know, girls, we have to get used to it because sometimes they can grab. If I'm wearing a body, I tend to go a size up. That is my trick. And they will go under any vintage skirts, and they just give you that streamlined look. If you want to wear the body, it kind of gives you that neat look. So if you've got loads of fabric, it does balance it out. So that is a little tip for you as well. So that's it. I hope you've learnt a few things. I have sort of rabbited on for quite a while, but I think the thing to say is be willing to experiment, be willing to go out of your comfort zone. I always think when you're shopping for vintage or you're shopping in a charity shop, if something sticks out to you, if a print sticks out to you, just grab it, because I always think clothes are like cats. They find you. I know it's a really weird analogy, a weird metaphor, analogy, whichever one it is. But they do tend to find you. You'll find that you'll go into a shop and there'll be a garment that will really stick out to you. And you might pull it out and think, well, it's kind of like a really boxy shirt. But think about how you can wear that. Could you wear it chucked over, a body and jeans? Could you wear it like that and a pair of heels? Would that elevate it slightly? So start to think about, which bits of your body you like. Start to think, I can be bold with print because that's going to give me a unique look that nobody else is going to have, especially if it's something from like the 60s or the 70s. And also start to think about the fact that if you try something on in a vintage shop and it's a little bit too tight, have a look at the hem. Does it give you enough to take it to a dressmaker and say, can you take it out slightly? Because again, that's going to give you something that makes you feel confident because it will fit your body. So I hope I've given you a little bit of information to enlighten you about my love of vintage and how it can really work for you. Because if you're stuck in that style rut, you're a mum like me, and you're thinking, well, I just don't want to spend loads of money, but I want to look good. It is a really good way to get and achieve that self-confidence with your wardrobe. More videos coming soon. Remember to like and subscribe. I hope you've loved it. Thanks for listening. Bye.